Good afternoon. We'd like to welcome you to the work session of October 21st, 2024. Chairman Candelaria is not with us today, so would you please rise and join with us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to do a little bit of altering to the agenda today. We'd like to bring up Bobbi Lock from the Health Department to discuss an emergency food and shelter program food pantry grant.
Okay, thank you for making that adjustment. Okay, so this is a grant that we want to apply for our food pantry. We're looking for healthy foods for our food pantry. It is through the Emergency Food and Shelter Program, EFSP, and we would get the funds November 1st and spend it by December 31st of this year. It's a very quick turnaround. It's $10,000, and again, we would use it to help stock our food pantry with healthy foods. Basically, we would be spending, when you break that down over 9 weeks, because that's what it is, we'd be spending about $1,000, $1,100 a week on food, which easily we do. Right now, we spend $800 when we go. So,
Ian?
Any questions?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is just the submission form, so, yeah.
And it is due tomorrow. They gave us an extension, so I need to submit it tomorrow once you all approve it. So, okay.
You have any questions? No, I don't.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I was just looking to see if I was eligible down there.
You might be.
I run off of there too fast, I couldn't read it.
All right, Wildfire Adaptive Partnership update.
Good afternoon. My name is it going? Yeah.
Yeah,
Ashley
there we go.
Downing, and I'm the Executive Director of Wildfire Adapted Partnership. And I'm here today with Celeste Moore. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Celeste Moore. I'm the Montezuma County Coordinator for Wildfire Adapted Partnership. We put together our presentation for you that gives a summary of what we've accomplished this year during our field season, as well as a budget request. We started with the wildfire risk for Montezuma. This is all U.S. Forest Service data. On average, Montezuma County has a greater wildfire likelihood than 84% of counties in the U.S. Also has a very high, over 50% percentage of homes that are in the WUI, which is the wildland-urban interface, which is basically homes intersecting with wildland that are not developed. Higher risk of homes as well, on average higher than 88% of counties in the U.S. And the majority of buildings are at direct exposure. Again, that's potential flame or igniting from vegetation surrounding the homes, and 22% at indirect exposure, which could be embers, home-to-home ignition. So very high for Montezuma County fire risk. The costs, as I'm sure all of you know, can be lives and safety from wildfire, loss of homes, fire response, not only in the cost for fire response, but also the safety of our fire response personnel. Potential infrastructure, air quality, watershed health. When we have a lot of smoke in the air, sometimes that can affect tourism, especially because we have our national forests and we have our Mesa Verde National Park, and we're an area for outdoor recreation, and people don't want to do that when there's smoke in the air. And lastly, wildlife habitat is affected by wildfire. What we do about it is risk reduction. And there's a lot of different ways that we help implement risk reduction with our programs. Number one is we offer free site assessments for individuals on their homes and property. We make home hardening recommendations, which is things that they could do to decrease the combustibility of their structures. We offer cost share for defensible space through contractors actually removing harmful vegetation that could be a fire risk. And we engage the community with different events and education and outreach. This is what we've accomplished so far in our 2024 field season. We've done 62 site assessments across the county in 43 different communities. We've mitigated 51 acres. We are expecting to have a few more added on. We still have ongoing projects. And we have awarded through our cost share program $74,000. And that goes as a reimbursement to homeowners, and it's also helping pay local contractors in the area who are doing this work. These are some examples of our cost share defensible space projects that we've completed this year. You can see the reduction in vegetation. Specifically that middle one, you can see how we've removed many of the ladder fuels and crowding of trees around the homes. We also, I use this position, we use our funding for education, outreach, and collaboration events. We did 16 outreach events this summer. In May, we did a landowner boot camp with MCD, BLM, U.S. Forest Service, and DWC, the Dolores Watersheds Collaborative. That was to help teach landowners about what they can do to mitigate on their own land. The photo there is from that event. We were teaching them how to properly load a chipper. Also in May, we did our wildfire preparedness days. We did one in Cedar Mesa Ranches, which included our local fire chief, Roy Wilkinson, speaking to landowners there, Steve Underwood, who's a local contractor, and myself sharing about defensible space and the importance of mitigating around the home. We also do neighborhood ambassador meetings every other month. Our ambassadors are volunteers that have taken up the torch of wildfire mitigation to share with their neighbors and encourage mitigation across a wider scope in their neighborhoods. And I've also tabled, given out educational material at the Dolores, Cortez, and Mancos farmers markets. We currently have 12 active ambassadors for our communities. We have 5 more that are interested in either taking over for some folks who are retiring or in completely new communities that we haven't worked with yet. We're going to have them go through an orientation in November and be ready for next year. We have 5 communities that are FireWise certified. We've helped them stay certified with FireWise, and 3 neighborhoods that have community wildfire protection plans. We've also helped the county with the Montezuma County Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Our budget request is $15,000. That helps support my position. I'm the only one working in Montezuma County. It's half of what it takes to fund my position for a year. And part of what that does, in addition to what our accomplishments are, is upholding the Montezuma County CWPP. I get recommendations for parcels that are being subdivided or having additional structures put on them, and I have to determine whether or not they need a wildfire mitigation plan. And so that includes part of my job, and also sometimes going out for site assessments to see if those structures already there have the home ignition zone guidelines are already mitigated to those guidelines. And if they're not, they need to come up with a wildfire mitigation plan so that they can do that subdivision. So continuing that work, being part of the CWPP, we would like to better include vulnerable communities and expand. Right now, the top map you can see is our current grant funding area. That's where a lot of our projects currently come out of, because that's where we can offer cost share. And everything else in the county, we can do free site assessments, we can do a chipper rebate, but sometimes that's all I can offer people. Besides the recommendations, I can't help cost share the mitigation, and it can be expensive. What I have on the bottom is a map of vulnerable populations from USFS, and that one shows families living under the poverty line. And you can see it's almost a direct contrast to where our grant funding is. So there's a lot of people in the county that we're missing, and we're not able to provide the support for wildfire mitigation that we could be. We'd also like to expand our neighborhood ambassador programs into those same areas. I think we get the majority of our recommendations for projects and people referred to our program from our neighborhood ambassadors, and so they're a really important resource for us. We'd also like to offer support in other areas of the county for getting FireWise certified or developing a CW. And then as always, across the board, we'd like to be able to provide consistent wildfire education opportunities and consistent education and outreach through my role in Montezuma County.
I just have one thing about some of that funding. So a lot of the reimbursements to landowners are currently through state funding grants that we have that are just for treating acres on the ground. So that's where we've come up with this request to try to cover more of Celeste's time for the education outreach component, going to people's homes and giving those recommendations one-on-one with the residents of Montezuma County. So, and we have some funding to cover that time, but not all of it. So that's where that request has come from. And she's currently part-time at 30 hours a week for the funding we have for this county. Any questions?
Gerald, do you have anything?
No, I've seen where they've done a lot of their work and
Yeah.
stuff, so it's not.
How do you define a community?
That's a good question. So sometimes it is a subdivision, if there's an HOA or a property owners association. Then we have others that are self-defined. So if there's some that don't have a governance structure, but people working together. One example of that is the area they've assigned as Cache Canyon Stinking Springs. So the residents there came together and said who wanted to be involved to create this fire-adapted community, and they created their own level of, and they have a community wildfire protection plan. So some of them are HOAs or POAs, and others are just self-defined, and the neighbors getting together and wanting to do work.
A lot of them, and that's why the ambassadors are so important, as they're able to keep track of who might be affected by wildfire in their vicinity, who might they need to talk to, and kind of be able to form that community.
Neighbors helping neighbors, and our ambassadors are the spark plugs in the communities, and Celeste does do a lot of work to support them in their role, but they are that first level of people moving to the neighborhood to introduce them to what it means for wildfire risk and who they can contact in Wildfire Adapted to help them get some work done on their property.
Okay. Travis, you have anything? Okay. All righty. Well, we thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today.
You bet.
Thanks.
Now we come to the fun part. We have a tax abatement request. Leslie, you at all want to come on up?
Do you want to go first or you want me to?
I don't care who goes first.
Don't we just kind of give
Go
it
ahead.
back? Okay. So this is a petition for abatement or a refund on taxes. So kind of the backstory on this is Mr. Sinton came in 2024 and protested his value for the 2024 year. We did a adjustment to his value based off of his appraisal that he had done in December of 2023 for the 2024 year. Since 2023 year was already done, we couldn't adjust his 2023 year taxes. So that's what this is to do, is to adjust the 2023 year, and it has to be done with an abatement request. So what we're requesting is that we adjust the taxes based on the adjusted value per the commercial appraisal that he has. I'll let you give your value and your kind of background on what you feel.
So we bought so this is for the Mancus Excelsior property. We have 34 acres, a little less, plus the building that was on it. And that property, the tax bill that we had gotten was $3,800. We got a bill for $93,000 or $88,000 or some.
89.
number. Yeah, a lot, a big change. And we had gone through an appraisal for a financing appraisal to refinance the property at the end of last year. Come back at 2.9 million, actually 2,950. And then when we got the taxes or the assessment from the county, it was assessed at something like
4,540,000.
okay. A lot of zeros. A lot more than what we were surprised. We had added a big building. We added a 52,000 foot building, spent about $1 million on it. And we were just surprised at the increase and where it came from. When I went and talked to Leslie, and that this was the process that we had to come to this, part of the form included me coming up with a value, and on the form I put $1.5 million, thinking that, and I pulled that number a little bit out of the air, but if our total value, the total appraisal included the building, we had an existing 10,000 square foot building already on the place in 33 acres. Seemed reasonable to think that that building is not worth half of the value of the entire property. So there's the number that I put on here based on the appraisal, kind of making some assumptions. But so my request is this, to me the number's not right, and where the original assessment came from, I don't know. I'm not going to claim to know anything about how the state or the county assesses property. I feel like under the circumstances, it's quite a bit higher than I have the ability to come up with that kind of money. I don't know if Gerald was on the commissioners at the time when we purchased that property. We'd asked the county, we'd come to the county and asked, which I hope I don't get off topic too much.
Go ahead. You can.
I'd come to the commissioners and asked if there was any opportunities for economic assistance, development assistance to reestablish that business. And at the time was told that there would be some, tax relief on that. When we got our bill, I went to the treasurer. There wasn't anything on the tax bill. I went to the treasurer's office and they said, well, the commissioners don't really have the authority to do that because of all the other districts and things that are part of the tax bill. And we paid the bill, and I'm not saying that as a complaint too much, but from our standpoint, we are continuing to grow that business. It's still getting it off the ground. We've just invested about $3 million in pellet mills and still have another $1 million or so to go to get that underway. According to Region 9, we're one of the largest private employers in the county. So anything that can be done to kind of help us survive getting a business going, we sure would appreciate the consideration from the commissioners with the job creation. But from a pure property tax standpoint, I don't feel like that the 2.9 is the right number. On this parcel, we had been in the town of Mancos. We had part of our property was in the town of Mancos when we built the big building. It overlapped what was in town and what was out of town. The town recommended that we ask for unannexation. So we went through that process and they unannexed that part of the property. So this appraisal, this $4 million appraisal, is on the big building and 1.7 acres. Is that right? Or close?
Yeah, it was.
So, not quite sure where I was going with that. But it's a small piece of the overall property, even though there's that new building is on it, or the addition is on it. I know I'm on the board of Empire Electric. We just offered put the office headquarters on the market. We had an appraisal of 2.3-ish million. I'm not sure if that's exactly the right appraisal. But we had got an appraisal of 2.3 million. Had no interest at all from any buyers. Sat on the market for a few months. The realtor come back to us and recommended that we try selling the property for $900,000. So that's quite a spread between an appraised value and what the realtor is saying is market value. Again, not knowing anything about how property is assessed. But there's a very recent real life example of a difference between an appraisal and value. If anybody would come to me with $5 million right now, they're welcome to buy a piece of property in Mancos. I'd be happy to sell it to them, but sorry about that.
I hear it every day.
Digressed.
I
I
hear it every day.
digressed. Anyway, so our request is that the valuation be set to something that's more appropriate. The existing bill that we got, I got no way of coming up with $95,000 or $93,000 to pay that bill. But I also think it's not a reasonable amount. The letter we got back, when I went to Leslie and I said, I disagree with this. She went to the state. The state, after a while, we got a letter back, and then we got a new assessed value of $2.9 million. So the amount of the appraisal became the value. Again, that's still only on the building in 1.7 acres, not on the entire property. The appraisal is on the entire property. So at the very least, I don't think that the response back from the state is the right number either. So there's my position.
So what we did in the assessor's office is, it was the commercial appraisers that not the state, it was the commercial appraisers that we were talking to. And they misunderstood on the appraisal that it wasn't just the new building and the land that the new building and the land we're sitting on. It is also a 31.94 acre parcel that is included in that appraisal. So what we did after Mr. Sinton came in a couple weeks ago is we took the appraisal and we split it between the two parcels and the new building. So the 31.94 acres is valued at $196,335. And the building, the 1.90 acres with the new building on it, we have now valued it at $2,774,372 for a total of the appraised value of the 2.9. So what the assessor's office is recommending for this abatement petition is reducing the actual value to $2,774,372 for account number R18283. Assessed value would then be $774,050, and taxes then would be reduced to $54,964.13. A reduction of taxes, $34,993.71. And that then splits the value between both of the properties. Because we had talked that the total value wasn't in this other property. So that takes both properties and splits the appraised value between both properties, not putting all the value on the one property. It splits them between both properties. And this will be corrected on the 24 value also. It was a mistake on our part, so we will correct that 24 value also to reflect the $196,000 on the other properties. So there will be a correction on 24's value also for this. This is also just the assessor's recommendation. The commissioners can, do a value for this abatement petition.
How is it valued? I mean, do
So
they
with
still
this-
use three different ways to value commercial property?
With this being a new basically looking at it as a new building. It was valued with the Marshall and Swift, just the cost approach to build it. And with the reevaluation, the land was valued with the sales approach. All of the cells brought in, we have to value, we valued the land with the comparable cells. And the land on this account is at $55,000. And when we pull out the building, we are valuing the building at $44.58 a square foot. And then, so that total comes to the $22,774,372. But with this being the new building, that's where that $4 million came from, is we just allowed the Marshall and Swift to do the original, because we don't have any comparable cells. We don't have anything to compare it to. So the commission,
my next question.
the commercial appraisers just let the system value it this year for our reappraisal, and we didn't have anything to compare it to. So then when he came in with the commercial appraisal, that's when we were able to dig into it and look at what, and I didn't print off the whole appraisal. I sent that to you guys, so
Right.
now we
mean-
have something to go off of.
Were the comparables, did they use any kind of comparables, like the Denver Boulder corridor or anything over there? State numbers?
We just went off of the appraisal because it was for a refinance. We just took that appraisal and used that for the value to get a base value.
You have anything?
How much did you say it cost you to build that building?
We spent just right at $1 million.
While you guys are pondering, Leslie, was there a notice sent out of this hearing to Mr. Sitton? The statute requires that notice be sent out from the Board of County Commissioners. Obviously, Mr. Sitton's here, and so.
No, I called him personally.
Okay, so Mr. Sitton, I guess, just for the record, are you willing to waive the notice? I mean, the statute requires that we send you something in the mail saying there's gonna be a hearing on your petition, and obviously you're here, so you know about it, but,
Yeah,
okay,
I'll waive it, yeah.
okay.
Do I need a lawyer here with me to ask that question?
I don't think so. I mean,
I'll be your
to be totally honest with you, we would kick this out a couple weeks and send you a notice, and then we could come back and dance again. So,
How long is the notice? 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
yeah, it's a 7-day notice, at least 7-day notice.
Okay.
Which way it publishes, it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, with the, yeah. I think given the language in the statute, though, this waiver would be sufficient for us to move
Okay.
forward today.
Do we move forward today, or do we make a decision tomorrow when we're formally in
Well, I
session?
mean, I think,
We can't make that, we shouldn't make that decision until that notice is done, should we?
well, I think because Mr. Sitton just waived the notice, I'm comfortable. I mean, he's here, he obviously had actual notice, and so I think I'd be comfortable.
I'm sorry, not to interrupt, but I do have an issue with, since this is financed and now it's on the delinquent property list, the finance company, or the bank has an issue with the fact that when's the tax sale date? Based on the notice, November or something. So I do have a little bit of a time
We need to
crunch
get it done.
personally, just to satisfy the bank.
Yeah, so I mean, in other words, if we send out the notices, it's gonna delay it further. And so Mr. Sitton
Right.
acknowledged that he had notice of the hearing, he did that on the record. I'm comfortable with you guys moving forward. In terms of a decision today versus tomorrow, I mean, I think that we're considering today to be the hearing under 2039-1-113 of the Colorado Revised Statute. So based on that, I would feel comfortable with the board making a decision if you guys are prepared to make a decision today.
Are you?
Today or tomorrow?
This-
It
Today.
has to be,
This is probably a mute question, but are you comfortable with the assessor's new numbers?
Well, That's substantially more than I would like to pay. But I mean, I don't have any way to argue. And I could argue, like I said, values based on, you know, other assessments, you know, just based on my experience, but, which is not saying that the assessor's office is wrong by any means. So I mean, I don't know. If there are other options, I'm all ears.
Well, so I think there are other options, and that today's your opportunity to put on a case for numbers other than what the assessor has recommended. And so that's the option.
Yeah, well, like I said, you know, from an appraisal standpoint, from a financing standpoint, appraisal and real life market value in Montezuma County, I suspect that you're gonna be hard pressed to get that kind of money out of that property, even though it's, you know, in the Mancos Valley. But that property is not gonna be property that you're just gonna sell like that without considerable amount of effort. So I even though I realize it's a sign of the times, I feel like that's still a pretty high assessed value on that property. And I realize I'm the guy that's speaking out of both sides of his mouth, because on one hand, I want it to be a higher value, but for the reality, for the taxes and for what it takes to be in business and continue this operation, that's a lot of money.
How much do you think it's gonna go up in assessed value if you get this pellet mill all in there?
I don't think it'll go up any in assessed value, because the pellet mill is all equipment. There's not additional buildings, and ultimately, there's gonna end up being some additional buildings when we get the operation going, but that's still 2 or 3 years down the road, and I would expect as more buildings go up, you know, that would increase the value of the property. But the pellet mills themselves is all equipment, infrastructure, that kind of stuff.
No buildings.
There's no buildings.
No. Basically, all that was new was just the big warehouse.
The big building.
Yeah. The rest of it was old building that didn't burn.
Everything, yeah, when we purchased the property, there was a 60 by 80 building, was the only structure still standing. We added another 40 by 80, more or less, addition onto the end of it, put it at about just under 10,000 square foot building that we had been manufacturing out of.
So you have 61,000 square feet total of
But
building.
today it's now about, it's just over 61,000 square feet total now. But when we started again, it was, when we started, there was a 60 by 80 building. We added onto it, gave us just under 10,000 square feet. And then in 2022, I don't remember when we built the building.
It was, you started in 21, ended it in 22.
Then it increased substantially.
Certainly, if you guys need more time to review numbers too, you can continue this hearing out a week, or if you do want to do that, I would suggest you continue it out to a Tuesday.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Go ahead.
I move that we set the corrected actual value to $2,500,000.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Anybody? Except Dave. Carried. Thank you.
So, does that change anything for the delinquent property taxes? We didn't pay because we didn't know what we were paying.
So,
I mean,
Can
yeah,
we,
you're-
from a time standpoint. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
all the interest and everything's gonna be taken away.
But
So
I
it'll
st- but I
just,
still have the same deadline.
So I think this is stuff that probably needs to be discussed with the assessor outside of this meeting. The purpose of this agenda item today was to address the values.
Yeah, she'll figure it out.
Well, just so I have time to deal.
yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
okay, let's get back over here on the page. Backcountry Search and Rescue County Allocation Grant Award. Robert? Kirk?
Good afternoon. This is for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Search and Rescue County Allocation. On June 25th, the BOCC approved the grant application submission form. We didn't have an amount because it's based on the state formula of how much funding they have and how they allocate it. We have been awarded $27,513 for this funding, and what we're asking is for the board to approve accepting the grant and then authorizing Commissioner Candelaria to sign as the county approved by. The search and rescue plans to use this. They aren't going to spend any of it next year. There's 2 years of. You have 2 years to spend the money. They plan on holding the money and then combining it with other funds in 2026 to spend for a vehicle and/or accessories and installation and upfitting of the vehicle for search and rescue.
Kirk?
We have a command trailer that is an older toy hauler that we converted to a incident command trailer with radios, and we can haul ATVs side by side in it. And it's a large enough trailer that it really requires 3/4 ton pickup to pull it. And we can't expect our volunteer members to donate their vehicles to pull this if they don't have one. And so it's sometimes difficult to get the trailer into the woods and so on. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish with this, is to put 2 years of funds together and be able to purchase a 3/4 ton pickup that we can pull this trailer with.
You have any questions, Joe?
No,
I don't. I think this is a good grant. Get it.
is that about the amount you've been getting on these grants?
Okay, one of our members has gone to Ford and spoken with them about it, and they have found a way to get us a pickup for about that price.
Okay, good.
Yeah, they have some rebate programs that are available on some of that, so,
We're working on some of those other items, yes.
okay. All right. Anybody have anything else? Travis, Ian? Okay, thank you guys for your patience. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Hazard Mitigation Plan Grant, Jim Spratlen.
The grant guy's hiding. Afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Ian, Mr. Anderson. Hey, so, you've got a lot of packets that were sent to you guys, but the quick overview was this hazard mitigation plan is mandatory. We have to renew it every 5 years, about 365 pages. Last time we had a contractor do it because I don't think this emergency manager has the bandwidth to put one of those together. In September of 2020, we completed it, but now we've got to get the approval. We've got to get it renewed. So the board back then, I think it was close to 40-some $43,000 is what we put towards the project to be completed in 2020. So in, what was it, May 23rd of 23, we were going to move forward with this planning grant, and the BOCC signed the approved grant for $50,000, which would give us our local share of $12,500. With that, we calculated out that about 5,000 or 4,000, I think one of your documents shows, we had in kind of 4,774, so we didn't have to pay the full amount. Waiting for FEMA, waiting for the state, waiting for this grant to open up, it didn't. And because we had this issue with our generators, you know, having a certain cost, and then it came down to the bottom line, the cost was higher, and we had to put, so I ended up finding out that we had this grant application. It's open this month. We can start putting the information in the portal and get the award, or at least somewhere in January to March, they would award us this funding. Well, I did some research, found out that 50,000 is not going to cut it anymore. So the proposals that I have in front of you are two of which. One, they did tell us Delta County put in, it was a $90,000 grant. Another county, I can't remember, was $75,000. Talking with the state and the feds, they recommend anywhere from $65,000 to $100,000 to get this hazard mitigation plan done. So with that, I went and I had the two proposals. One is $60,580. The other is $80,580. And that would be sufficient. The 80,000 would be sufficient. The 60 is kind of basically what we approved in 2023. So calculating it out, it looks like the in-kind will go up to probably close to 10,000, and that's always dependent on how many people show up for the grant, what their wages are, but because volunteer wages are up, we calculated almost $10,580. So the difference between 2023 and now is about $5,000. And that's what I'm requesting. Out of both proposals, I would prefer sending out getting the grant and try to get the grant at 80,000, which would put us in-kind match of our project cost would be 20,000. Take 10 off of that. Our project in-kind would pay for 10,500. So our cash is 5,564 now instead of 4,564. So it's a $5,000 an adjustment. That's what I'm asking for, and I have both of those documents, which either one you would like to approve tomorrow. And I do recommend the 80,000, so then when I put it out for bid, because that's going to be, what, another 4-5 months from now when we put it out, and again, costs keep going up. So I kept it below the 100,000, but I think at 80, we got a really good chance of getting this. So it's 5,000 more that I'm sort of requesting in the cash side. So.
Okay. Gerald, do you have anything?
So,
Nope. We're good? Uh-oh. The attorney's thinking.
Is this an actual law that we have to redo this every 5 years, or what's?
Yeah, what happens is if we don't, I know a neighboring county that went past his deadline to renew it, and now there's no grant funding for it. When we have this FEMA hazard mitigation plan, it goes over all of our hazards throughout the county, and based on that, 5 entities, the county, Mancos, town of Mancos, town of Dolores, city of Cortez, us, and the fire district are partners in it. And based on any mitigations that we see because of hazards, we put it in our mitigation lineup in that grant, or in that planning grant, the HMP. And that is where we can pool the funds at 75-25. So our generators, they were in there. If they weren't in there, we're not eligible for the FEMA funding. So it paid for our generators. It paid for the siren and generator Dolores. It paid for Mancos Watershed Planning Grant for $5,000. So anything that's in that we all sit and mitigate, it allows us to get that grant funding, so.
One of the issues that I have with these plans is we get these plans that are 400 pages, and quite frankly, nobody even knows what's in the plans because they've got stuff
Nobody reads
that,
it.
I mean, they've got hypotheticals like you wouldn't believe. And so in looking at an amount of $80,000 to develop a 400 or 500 page plan, strikes me as a little bit silly. And it occurs to me that we could develop something much smaller, much more comprehensive, and much simpler, and probably still meet our legal requirements that would make us eligible for grants for a lot less than $80,000.
So
This
in,
is,
so in answer to that, though, in my research, Delta County put in, and it was 90,000, got the vendor to do it all, and FEMA wrote back a 2-page essay on how they didn't do this, and why they didn't do that, and how come that's not in there, and why didn't you involve more of the community at Mora, and it went into all this detail.
and I guess it just becomes a question how much you guys want to play that game, and how much do you want to spend playing that game.
Right.
Because practically speaking, these plans don't have a lot of value. And they do help us get some grant money, but we can write a lot simpler plan, probably internally, that would still make us eligible for grants and cost a heck of a lot less than $80,000. A 400 or 500 page plan that we have to go through,
Right.
it's a lot of paper, it's a lot of red tape, and we always talk about trying to cut down on that. Well, this is a great example of putting a whole bunch more in.
Right, and this has all the hazards, including the CWPP.
There,
All those are involved, all the wildland fire mitigations in there, avalanche, floods, the lightning, all of that stuff that's our hazards in our county go into it. So it's pretty detailed. Now, honestly, if you look at the plan, it has emails in it, it has proposed this in it, so there's a lot of, I guess, coordinating and planning that's in the plan to show that we've actually done all that, but that's, that's what FEMA wants. So I'm going to say the meat of it, there's probably a good 100 pages of meat, and it's good for updates, so. That's my plan, I'm sticking to it.
I'm not sitting in the right chair to comment anymore.
I understand.
All right.
So 25% of it's worth reading and the rest of it's not.
Yes, sir. On that big hazard mitigation plan, it's pretty good, but there's a lot of fluff.
All right,
Smoke and mirrors and something.
there we go. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Sounds like mostly smoke and no mirrors.
A lot of that anymore.
Yep.
Okay. Shak, you're here for a letter of support for internet service providers seeking broadband equity access and development funding. Boy, everybody's leaving.
Boy, do I clear out a house or
I
what?
guess so.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Shaq, would you move that? We had a meeting this morning. Would you move that podium over just a little bit towards me? That'll work.
Is this working?
Yeah.
You know what kind of geese don't have knees? Portuguese.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
that
It
the
was
jelly?
supposed to be what kind of geese don't fly. I don't know why I threw the knees thing in there. But we're here to talk about BEAD funding, broadband equity, access, and deployment. That's more money coming down from the federal government, and it's going through the Colorado Broadband Office. The Colorado Broadband Office is set to receive nearly $1 billion with a B funding from the BEAD program, and it is designed to connect fiber to the premise or broadband to the premise if fiber can't be met to all the unserved and underserved areas of Colorado. And so for Montezuma County, there are 4 internet service providers that are applying for funding. Fortunately, there's not a whole lot of overlap in their applications, and if they're all successful, Montezuma County will be very well covered. So you have 4 letters before you. You have one for Nimbus. They are trying to reach areas east of Mancos. So that'll be useful in moving the 160 gap that's a priority, trying to connect Cortez to Pagosa Springs. Then you have Clear Networks is trying to get basically everything that's in between the triad of Mancos, Cortez, and Dolores, the areas in between that are underserved, and probably from Narragansett back. Then you have Farmers Telephone, and they're in the room with us today. They are trying to go after funding that will go to connect the town of Rico and the things north of Highway 145 all the way down to Narragansett and then back that direction. That is going to be a critical piece of infrastructure. I know Rico is not in Montezuma County, but they are certainly one of our neighbors. Currently, they only have connection coming in from the north. So anytime that Rico Telephone, which is actually, it's some outfit out of Idaho doing business as Rico Telephone, but their fiber connection comes in from the north, and oftentimes when they're doing digs in Telluride and in Mountain Village, it takes out the town of Rico. So that's a vital connection, thinking of the region. It will also give us another a redundant route to reach Region 10 when we can get over Lizard Head, because, did I lose Mike? Nothing, huh? So that connection over 145 will give us a redundant connection, so we don't have to be reliant on the tri-state line to reach Region 10, which gets us through Montrose and into Grand Junction. And then the final letter you have in front of you is from Emory Telecom. They've built from Monticello into Dove Creek, and they're currently in the process of building towards Lewis, and they're hoping to connect all the way into Cortez. So if all of these are funded, the only areas that would be lacking service in the county at this point would be McElmo Canyon and then out towards Goodman Point, if all this gets connected. There is a 25% match requirement, but that is not on the county. That's on the internet service providers that are going after the funding. So there's no financial request from the county. And the projects do require a bid bond. So if somebody wasn't able to follow through, they would be able to call the bond and make sure that the project is still completed. So as far as getting connectivity to Montezuma County, it looks like a pretty good shot at that. And especially when you think of the sons of George Soros buying up the FCC licenses for AM radio, it's probably going to be a little bit more essential to have broadband connectivity for information in this region.
Shaq, how long we been at this?
Commissioner, I was born here in the 70s.
In a middle-class
You know, we've
family?
been working on trying to get connectivity in this region as long as I can remember. Al Gore didn't invent the internet until the 90s, so we've been working on it at least since then. But we have been an isolated, looked over place, and you know from your spot on the board with Empire Electric, that rural areas were the last ones to get electricity too. And it's kind of the same way with the broadband connectivity. We're kind of last on the menu, if you will. But we've been at it for a long time. And I will say that it's going to probably continue for a little bit longer, even if everybody's successful getting these. The applications are due October 28th. And so the Colorado Broadband Office is going to take a couple months to review the applications. Then there'll be the contracting phase of that, which will put us into early 25. So it's doubtful we would see any construction begin until spring of 25. And the BEAD has a 5-year time limit to get completed. So full build out could hypothetically be, of all the BEAD projects, 2030.
There's a story from Empire Electric that they were putting poles, and the wife came home and there was a pole right in the middle of her garage door driveway. And she asked her husband to move it, and he says, "No, I'm gonna move the garage because we're gonna have electricity."
That makes sense. I understand that. And if you look at the connectivity maps, southwest Colorado is definitely not very well lit up.
Still rural and still underserved.
Yes, sir. And Farmers is in the room with us if you have any questions about their application. I know you guys have the letters in front of you, but
I'm good. I appreciate you guys coming. Thank you.
Takes a lot of effort just to get all the planning done, much less try to get the money to do it.
yeah, and the way the Colorado Broadband Office grouped the project areas, it was a lot of planning. It didn't necessarily make sense, but they're jumping through the hoops and peeling off the red tape the best they can.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, now we have a discussion regarding insurance, health insurance for Montezuma County. Dennis, Jake, come on down.
Jake,
Afternoon, gentlemen.
Jake, are you gonna need to connect to the system?
I was just gonna give percentages
Okay.
versus numbers, like I usually do. I know we were way in the weeds, I don't think.
It's whatever you want.
What's that?
What would you prefer?
Percentages.
Okay.
We don't have to go
Yeah, I mean,
too deep, but.
yeah. No, we're here to answer whatever questions, so whatever you would like.
Okay.
So we did meet this morning with Jake. Has some fairly decent news, and there's some things that we want to talk about, not just the cost of the insurance and the increase, but as we had talked earlier, kind of some of the things to do that would be proactive to try and help curb our costs down the road. One of the things that I did send Jake before he came down, and having a little extra time, I think worked out maybe to an advantage of getting some more information, is just some of the programs that are available through whoever we're going through for insurance on what would be available to help us with that. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. So with that, I'll give it to Jake and he can explain where we're at.
So the insurance committee and I met this afternoon, actually early this morning. We did our typical bid process. We did bid Montezuma County out to 40 different carriers this year. Of those, we received bids back from 3, with Cigna, your current, being one of them. Biggest reason why is we've had an extreme uptick in claims to a level we have not seen before. In the process, originally Cigna came in at 29.9%. We did receive a bid from a pool outside of what I do. They're called CEBT. They did come in at 17%. We also received a bid through United Healthcare Direct at 12%. Part of the discussion today was 12% given the uptick in claims was actually very good news to be at that 12%. Anytime you go up double digits though, it's hard. This was with quite a bit of negotiation, looking at claims, looking at the type of claims costs. And one of the things that we did talk about is our prescription drug utilization has gone up quite a bit. One thing that attracts us about United Healthcare is they own their own PBM, right? So with that, they're going to be very incentivized to utilize, and PBM is prescription benefit manager, just making sure. They're going to be extremely incentivized to make sure that they're getting these drugs at a lower cost to the plan because they're paying that out in cost as well. So insurance companies are not, they're a for-profit business, unfortunately. And they are in the business to make money. So they're going to try to, every dollar of premium that is spent in, they're going to spend that more wisely because our claims are trending, just to give the quick numbers, at the 12%, our total spend in cost is 2.9 million. That's up from 2.6. Other bids were, I had one at 3.5 million, I had one at 5. So I take that back. When I said we had 3, I did have some stop loss carriers quote as well. So they take on the risk. We had 2 of them quote, one at 3.5 million, one at 5 million. Our claim projection just on our large claims through the end of the year is 2.2 million. That's just our large claims. So with that being said, our spend is looking at 4 million. So we're upside down as it stands there. So in order to mitigate costs, what we're trying to do is United Healthcare has all our data. They know what our risk profile is. So they're looking at it, and the whole thing that they're looking at is how do we mitigate these costs. So a lot of it is with them owning their own PBM, we will be getting drugs at a lower cost. So that will help our bottom line and our spend. The other thing that was spoken about in pretty good detail is, hey, we've got these high claims. We've been on uptick. What are we doing from a wellness standpoint? Like, what can we do to better our situation? And one thing that really intrigued us about United Healthcare is they have a very robust wellness program. And what you do is you're able to log in through their app, and you can accumulate points. So, for example, if you go to the doctor and get just your yearly routine, like your blood draw and your yearly physical, you get points for that. If you do exercise, you get points for that. The good news is they will give $300 either credit to the HSA or a $300 gift card to everybody who hits the certain metrics. That is not a cost to us. That's part of the plan. So one of our challenges in the past has been, how do we install a wellness program that's this robust without paying for it? Because typically wellness programs will cost us about $3 to $5 per employee per month. So it's an extra spend on our end. So what this allows us to do is incentivize employees, so there's actually something to incentivize. So hey, if I hit these metrics, I actually get something, whether that's an HSA contribution or I get a $300 gift card to Visa gift card. So I think we're pretty bullish on that, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to steer people more towards healthy choices. And I think that's what we're going to need to do to start getting this spend down. And we're going to have to be very proactive with it.
In years past, when we've had department meetings, we've always stressed, do your annuals, but we didn't have a way to incentivize it.
Right.
Hopefully, I'm a little bit encouraged. Hopefully, we can get there. I don't know, but
Another part of the communication today, especially from Dennis, and
Yep.
Dennis, maybe you can
Sure.
speak on this too, is what we're gonna try to do is have the department heads, there are some people that don't utilize email, right? So we'll be passing out a flyer probably once a month on wellness and on our plan. The other unique thing about this too, that was a bone of contention, is there are some members of the plan that don't have a primary care physician. And what United is able to do is we have Teladoc at a $0 copay, unlimited times. If you're on the HSA, it costs you $54.
Right.
Which is a heck of a lot cheaper than if you went into the doctor's office, your HSA, you're probably getting out of there at $100, $150. So if you're on the HSA plan, there's a slight cost to it. If you're on a copay plan, it's a $0 copay. And all you're doing is a televisit. So if you have a sore throat, you're not going to the ER for it. So I think a lot of that communication needs to be pushed out a little bit better, and Dennis is very, very much looking forward to it, but really wanting to incentivize that.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is too, it's even possibly talking to the health department to see what we can do through them to, like, instead of maybe having, apparently we had a health fair at one time and it just didn't really do as well to have that centralized, situation. We might start off smaller, like using the health department to maybe go around to the people that don't utilize things to like get blood draws done and get some of the blood work done for them. I think there's a larger discussion past just, taking on an insurance company to provide insurance. I think there's a much larger conversation needs to happen on what we can do on our side outside of just paying the premiums, and what, if any, money do we need to maybe invest in those programs out of the county funds, and look for as many self-funded things like they have, where it's not at a cost to us and we do get some benefit back out of it, and have the managing tools. That's where I see that I think we're on a good path with the provider and where we're at. I think it's just going to be, the committee and myself and everybody getting together and trying to keep pushing this forward and trying to work on a plan that we all think is going to go forward to help us try and reduce those fees, the costs that we're incurring, because we're not going to go down. We're going to, at the current rate we're at right now, with some of the things we have internally, we're going to stay pretty high for a while. And so we've definitely, on a business plan, need to try and figure out what's the easiest and best way to, one, keep our people healthy, and then, also try and mitigate some of our claims.
I know when I was on the fire department, we instituted physicals.
Sure.
And we caught a number of problems before they peaked out.
Absolutely.
And it really benefited some guys.
And that's what kind of, the people that don't have the primary care physician, one, they can tell a doc for the minor stuff, and that might catch a few things. Or really what it does for us, instead of being, I know it's like $200 to the plan to go to the walk-in.
Yeah.
So if you drop 100 of those in a year, that's a pretty substantial amount of money. So there's just all these things to chip away, but like I said, doing the blood work somehow for those people, like on a health fair premise, right? The city seems to have a very good program. Hospital has a decent program. It would be, the recommendation out of the benefits committee is to talk to them, maybe bring them in and see what their plan is, how it's worked. It's not going to be something that we don't expect to have 80%, involvement after 1 year. I'm sure all their programs had to evolve over time. But they've already done some of the work, talk to them, not reinvent the wheel, and try and figure out, because they have the same demographic of people, they're still working in Montezuma County. So they obviously have figured out something that works with the people that live here. Every community is a little different. And so I think if we work with those two sets of people and then try and start wheeling something that works for us, it's going to be a work of time, but it also may require a little bit of financial input from the county side. But like I said, we're still trying to find as much as we can that's already provided in the plan, so that way it's at no cost. And it's something that's very easily used, that they're already going to be in the system that they're using. So.
And I think the real attractive piece is we can actually, for the first time, have an incentive, where before it was, hey, go get your physical. Well,
Yeah.
if you're not one to normally want to do that, I'll be real, I'm one of them. I hate going to the doctor. But if I have an incentive of, hey, you could get a $300 gift card, you know, maybe that's something I look at. So I think that piece is very attractive that they're bringing to the table, is that they're actually giving us money in the form of incentives. So I think we'd have a little bit better luck than we have in the past, given that there are some reward system.
And I think one of the things that'll have to happen too is a little more time management from my office with our provider to ensure that, you know, the communication is happening, that we are staying on top of these large claim situations to make sure they're getting a, what do you call them? A claim what?
Oh, a claim management.
Yeah, the claim management in place, you know, that if we know something's coming down, that, you know, at least we're talking all the time and making sure that we're both on the same page and everybody's working towards, you know, trying to lower these costs as much as we can and not have it go too long when we know something's coming down. So I think that's another thing that's going to have to happen. A little more communication, maybe even monthly, between my office and our provider.
And I'm encouraged when you first started about the prescription drug side of it. I think that's going to help a little bit too.
Being under one roof, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they can actually, where Cigna now, they don't actually own their own PBM. It's outside. So
Right.
it's a little more difficult.
Right.
And you know, Cigna was good for us at the time, but, you know, their appeal came down to 23.9. It's just not feasible.
No.
You know, we're looking at 11%, almost 12% less by going to United Healthcare.
Yeah.
And they have quite a few tools, like I said. I mean, we've got to, I think we just really are going to have to work on some things to help ourselves. So, yeah.
All right. Gerald, do you have anything? No. Travis? Got a couple from the benefit committee here. Got anything, Jason?
Just educate your employees more on what they have in the insurance that we have now.
Okay.
And utilize those things.
Jane?
Make sure everybody has a provider.
Okay.
Get their physicals every year for blood draws.
I mean, we used to have a health fair in the community that drew hundreds of people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I volunteer with that every year.
Yeah. Do we still have it?
No.
What happened to it?
COVID.
COVID?
Yeah.
Okay.
COVID killed everything.
One last piece is if we do have a blood draw, we can actually put that through the insurance too.
Yeah.
So a lot of these kind of outside wellness programs, what they'll typically do is charge you $100 a piece for a blood draw. And then they'll monitor it. So they'll give you a health coach and things of that nature. And that typically costs between $3 to $5 per member per month. But then there's also that $100 cost of the blood draw that's outside of the plan.
Right.
Where with this, you know, even if we do have a blood draw, it's through the plan. So we have that big discount. And then the other thing is people are getting incentivized to do so. So they hit one of their goals by going to get their blood work done.
Yeah, because the health department does take our insurance, and that was kind of the thought this morning was,
Right.
you know, if we could have it being done and then have it being billed back into the system like it should be, you know, then it's not as big of out of cost to the patient too. So it does incentivize them to not have to go, you know, eat that and not get it done. And because we do know how much preventative care is a huge part of this. And so I think that's one tool that we could basically try and keep it in the self loop and that's something we're going to look into.
And that service
So-
is free, by the way.
Okay.
So you get one a year.
This is, yeah,
You get one physical a year.
right.
I mean, that's part of the Affordable
Right.
Care Act.
Yep.
One more touchy question. Do we have any religious conflicts with our employees doing this?
Not that I'm aware of. As far as with insurance,
With the physicals and?
not that I know. I
and the
mean,
blood draws?
not that I've been told.
Okay.
And I haven't had any complaints or any issues yet. So,
I don't know where one would arise though from a yeah, I don't know. Oh, I guess there could be.
There is.
There's some that.
But I'm unaware at this point, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't been here long enough.
And we could deal with that on a case-by-case basis, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Jim? You could do blood draws, right?
What?
You can do blood draws.
He uses too big of needles, though.
Yeah?
Yeah. See?
Yeah, but he uses
If you
like
can hold them
6
still.
gauge.
Yeah. Ian can hold him down. Anything else?
I think we're good, if you're good.
Appreciate your guys' time.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for the work.
You bet. Okay, the VFW request for use of the annex is off of the agenda, so we're down to the inmate health services renewal. Sheriff Nowlin. And Vicky.
And Lieutenant Pierce. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Guess we're the last ones in the room, so that's where we're at.
Feel all alone.
Some of the discussions that I had with the county administrator back in September and whatnot about the Southern Health Partners and our medical provider for the detention center. All I can do is give some of the history of it. We entered into this, we started this back in 2022, and a lot of this research was done by looking at what was available by the county jails throughout the state and who was recommended and where they provided without any problems. And one thing about it is that the Southern Health Partners that we had came very well recommended. But the thing was, I guess they've been in business for a lot longer than most others, which has helped. But when we started this, we brought all of this information to the Board of County Commissioners, and Southern Health Partners came here, discussed what it was, and this was forced upon us by the state mandates for medical care within the detention center and all of the jails throughout the state. So back in 2023, that total cost for the year was $290,482, and it was shorted because we started out on January the 5th through December 31st. And then in 2023, or in 2024, it increased. It increases about $12,000 a year, basically. And they included that, and that was one of the big discussions that we had through the county attorney and the sheriff's attorney and the attorneys with SHP, and developing that contract and trying to reduce that number of percentage that they wanted to increase every year. And we understand that there's costs that go with that, but trying to keep those costs down so it didn't affect the county was most important. So in 2024, it increased up to $302,449. So again, it was just below $12,000 increase. That's rough. That was, let's see, we're paying about $25,204.10 a month out of that. And this proposal for 2025, from January 1 to December 31st, is showing another increase of $12,097.92, which is roughly $26,212 a month. The cost, or the cost that for having more than 80 inmates that was negotiated with within the contract went up just a few cents. It went up to $1.34 for next year, where it was only about $1.25, I think, when we started. We've tried to keep those costs down as far as the number of inmates, which is what I've talked to you about over the months.
about the inmate costs and whatnot within the facility. Is it not picking up? Oh. It's not Duracell batteries. Okay, all right.
Energizers.
Yeah, Energizer. So, and I just got up to the third quarterly report from SHP we did today, and I forwarded that on to Travis. And and it breaks down whatever our average of inmates throughout the year of 2024. The month of March, we had 4 more than so we went over 4. There was 84 as an average there. So everything has been below, so they've covered all of those costs. But that breakdown also shows exactly how many were sent to the emergency, outside medical visits, things like that. On-site mental health, it breaks it down into, especially with the MAT patients, and what care was given to those required under the state statute, and how many prescriptions or meds were administered to how many inmates for the average, either through that month, and what the totals are so far. Right now, we're running in between 60 and 70 inmates per day. So I don't anticipate that that will go over our 80 cap for this insurance plan. But again, what do we know? What will happen? That's the biggest problem, is guessing where that will be and looking at what our averages were over the past years. And we've certainly dropped it down quite a bit. And having those discussions with the courts, and of course, you know that with our state legislators, they don't want to put anybody in jail, so that's kind of helped in our favor a little bit. But we still have some of those costs to cover. When we talked about, he suggested that, putting out to bid for contracts and whatnot, or services provided. And that's the decision for the commissioners, really. I mean, I don't care one way or another, but I'm not an attorney, and I can't provide and prepare an RFP. What Travis sent me from El Paso County, I had to laugh at, because it's like 72 pages long, and they have a department that does nothing but that for that county. We don't have that. And so I've done due diligence in the past with this, and and you've seen the facility, and you see the record of what's been going on. They've really saved us a lot of money. We're not taking people to the clinics and transports to the hospital as much as what we were before any of this happened. So it has been helping quite a bit, and they've been covering a lot of those costs and making sure that they're at least there 365 days out of the year has been so important, because before they didn't want to be there on holidays. And we were able to negotiate on, we got to have somebody there every single day, okay, because the law is requiring that every one of these inmates be examined for their health conditions, mental health conditions, on and on. If there's any addictions for drug or alcohol, those things have to be treated, and or at least put on a plan. And so it has saved, but unfortunately that saving does cost. And I wish that we didn't have to have that, but I'll tell you, it's helping keeping us out of the civil liability and issues that we've had in the past. So whatever you would like to do, I mean, I would just need to have some help if that's what you want to put it out to a bidding process.
Well, one of the concerns, if I can interrupt and say, is if we're going to put it out for bid, there's not just, hey, come in and do healthcare. It also has to coordinate with my policies. We have to coordinate with their policies. We have to follow certain protocols. And if we're starting with new companies, every time we want to put it out for bid, that's going to be an ongoing cycle that concerns me. The care and quality that we're getting out of CHP, they work well with access, the mental health, everything has just meshed really well together to where even the inmates know that we have that quality care, that I don't have the grievances, I don't have the threats to sue. they know they don't have a leg to stand on. And that should be something that the county takes into consideration.
So I have a question and then a comment. And my question is to inmate population at the jail. I get the jail list and I see the numbers, and it seems like the jail population has gone down. And it seems like that's reflective of some of the laws that have passed pertaining to releases within 48 hours and such. Is that accurate to say?
That's accurate, and that's been helpful, and that's been, again, like I said, with those laws changing and dealing and meeting quarterly with the judges and talking about those issues about not incarcerating some of these people that don't need to be incarcerated, has really helped steer that toward that. It really has.
And I guess the question that I have coming off that is, I mean, I remember when we first entered into this contract, and there was a provision in the contract that called for, if my memory serves me right, I think they were calling for a 5% increase every year in rates. And I remember striking that term because it didn't seem to make sense that we would just have a blanket increase every year. And we had a lot of discussion with the attorneys about that. But now we're at a point in this last year, we see a 4% increase. And yet we're seeing a decrease in the number of inmates that we're seeing at the jail. Now, I understand on one end of it, they still have to have staff there and they still have to have coverage. But on the other side of it, if there's less service to provide, it seems a little hard for me to wrap my head around that we're still getting what's been a consistent 4% increase a year. I'm wondering whether we have any leverage with them at this point to say, hey, look, our number of inmates is down. Can you guys make the cost reflective of that? And I don't know if that conversation's been had or not.
It hasn't been yet because we haven't had this discussion. But the thing is what I've seen and looked at this, there may be some room to reduce that cost by reducing the average number from 80 down lower, okay? But understand that if we go over, let's say we drop it, if we can negotiate down to 70 inmates average per month, okay, instead of 80, what would that cost be? So if it's $1.34 a day per inmate that goes over that, is that saving us money? It might. I mean, that's a possibility.
It was just something that occurred to me when I looked at the numbers. If we have fewer people at the jail, it doesn't seem to make sense that we're getting what's been a consistent increase in line with what was put in the original contract, even though we don't have that contractual provision. And so my assumption is that Southern Health Partners is just checking a box and saying 4%, 4%, 4%, 4%, without really looking at what's on the ground in the Montezuma County Jail, which is actually a decrease from what it was back in 2022 when we first entered into this contract.
And I agree with you. It has dropped, okay? And I hope that it continues to be consistent like this. And if we can, and do we look for other medical providers that provide for psychological and mental health as well in that? And, you know, that's a possibility. And really, that's a discussion that we all, I mean, you guys have to help with.
What are your thoughts on, I mean, I know that they want this signed in the immediate, and it's now October 21st, but something that would make sense to me, I mean, I wonder if we put off the signing for a couple weeks, and I mean, I'm happy to aid in the discussion and put some numbers together for Southern Health Partners and say, hey, you know, the services that are needed have been reduced because our jail population's been reduced, and see if we can't negotiate a number that's more in line with what's actually happening on the ground.
Oh, exactly. And I agree with you. We should. Because we have till November 29th
Yeah.
to do this. And so we can certainly reach out to Southern Health Partners and see about what the cost would be, what reductions can happen because of the situation that we're in. And with the numbers being lowered, if lowering that average month and lowering some of those costs that they provide, what would that look like? And so we can certainly have that discussion, and we should.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think it would make some sense. The other comment I would have, unless you guys want to talk
I
on
would
this.
just, on the average, what are you averaging? What
Well, as
number?
it shows there, it's between 60 and 70. So as you can see there, you know, we've been about the mid-70s, more than we've been into the 60s. And so, but we haven't gone over 80 other than 1 month. And again, that's by reducing the number of those people that are incarcerated that don't need to be. And you've heard me say this before, it's a lot of those protection order violations just get me, okay? When you're dealing with giving an order to a person that is a drug addict or an alcoholic and preventing them or telling them they can't consume, okay? And if they do, they're in violation of that court order. And instead of writing them a summons, they're often arrested by other agencies. We don't do that, okay? But other agencies that utilize the facility do. And we've had those discussions with them about this. And they are trying to curb that. But I'm telling you, you've seen what their population is of the folks here in Cortez. And that's where a lot of it comes from. It's not so much outside in the unincorporated areas of the county. So.
I have a question on one of the numbers, Steve. Refusals. Is a refusal counted against our numbers, or is it just a number put on a piece of paper?
It's just a number of how many inmates we have in there, whether they accept that medical examination and that treatment.
Okay.
They have a right to refuse, just like they would if
Right.
at the hospital. Yeah.
I just didn't know if we were being charged like an office visit at a doctor's.
No, we're just charged, if it was over that amount, let's see, you got in the month of March, so the refusals, screening, seen by.
It's about the middle of the page.
So in the month of March, there was 39 people that refused, but we were over by 4.
Okay.
So we were charged $1.25 a day for
Okay.
them, for as long as they were there. And most of those are not here that long. The city of Cortez has been good about working with the county court and combining a lot of those sentences from municipal court into the county court sentences. And so that helps. It's not an additional number of an inmate. And
Okay.
so they're serving their time as they're serving their time on the state charges or the county charges. Yeah. So that helps. But and I don't know what's going to happen in the next year or two. I don't know. I don't know. Folks, I tell you, it's frustrating and it's aggravating because you don't know what is going to come down from Denver.
You know, and I think along those lines, just a comment I would make, you know, I don't know with timing and whatnot, how possible an RFP is for this year. I don't know. It's pretty tight on timing. But if we decide to go an RFP route in the future, you know, Sheriff, I certainly appreciate what you're saying about the legal aspects of an RFP and what needs to be done in that regard. You know, on the flip side, I can tell you that as an attorney trying to draw up an RFP without insight into what's actually going on in the jails, it's very difficult to get the proper terminology and the proper requests for services that are needed. And so I guess what I would urge is, you know, whether it happens this year or whether it happens in the future, I think we need to bring everybody together and we need to get an RFP out that's going to be reflective of what you guys need, and then that meets the legal requirements that I can aid in or.
And I think everything that, and using the contract that we have with SHP and looking at what they provide, which is what the state requires, is a good go-by to put that together. It really is. So we're not reinventing the wheel, but it needs to be put together where it is coming from this county and not somewhere else. Yeah.
All right.
So by next week, we can have an answer on some of those reduced costs.
Sure.
And if you want me to be involved in any of those discussions, I'm happy to be.
Well, I'm glad
just
that
get in touch with
you
me.
offered, okay, because you should be.
Yeah,
Okay?
so.
You really should be.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense that costs go up when the need for services go down. That
Exactly.
doesn't, I mean, and that's a term thing, that's not a legal thing. But from a common sense perspective,
sense.
if
Exactly.
there's less of a need, you shouldn't have to pay more.
That's right.
So,
Yeah. So we'll reach out to them. We'll see if we can't set up some type of a Zoom meeting like we've done in the past with them to have those discussions with these people that are in charge of that contract and see what we can do. Okay?
You bet.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. All right. Anything, anybody have anything else to bring forward? Hearing none, we're adjourned.